Snorlax is easily one of the bulkiest Pokemon from Gen 1. Massive HP, great bulk, thick fat as an ability, and even access to the combination of Rest Talk plus Curse. But could he beat every single Pokemon in Fire Red if they had their best competitive moveset? Let's find out. To start off, this is the Snorlax that I'll be using. He currently only knows Body Slam, Rollout, Rest, and Sleep Talk. I know it's a bit of a weird moveset, but this is only based around the ones that he can learn via level up. I wanted to start by using only those just to see how far he could get with that limitation. Now, as for how I'm going to be facing off against each Pokemon, I modified Pokemon Fire Red to turn it into a gauntlet, where each room I go into represents a tier of competitive battling, going from the strongest in Ubers, where there's both Mewtwo and Mew, all the way to the lowest tier that exists right now, which is SU or Sub-Zero used, with Pokemon like Farfetch, Onix, and Parasect. I also added some lower tiers that I personally made to differentiate Pokemon that are even weaker. And what better way to represent that than the first room, which is composed of the weakest of the weakest. Caterpie, Metapod, Weedle, Kakuna, Magikarp, and Ditto. I got a bit worried about Ditto when he transformed before I could attack, but my Body Slams ended up doing way more damage than what he could take. With Snorlax's high attack stat and strong body slams, he had almost no trouble making it all the way to the room that represents the Zero Use tier, which is the 5th one out of 12, and defeating a total of 52 Pokemon on the way, obliterating all of the rooms before that. Now, it wasn't like it was all easy, as I soon realized that having a base speed of 30 can cause some issues, especially if the only coverage move Snorlax has is Rollout. The first real problem was sleeping moves. Only Bulbasaur and Butterfree made me restart, and you might think that having Sleep Talk would have made it an easy win, but not only can I not predict when Snorlax is going to wake up, but the move is only really useful if it selects Body Slam, as Rest does nothing, and Rollout only hits once, even if Snorlax wakes up the next turn. I still won both fights, but it shows how unreliable the move can be. Another issue was rock types. Kabuto, Onix, and Geodude. Rollout wasn't really cutting it, and even worse was that because both Onix and Kabuto outsped, the Roxalites had a chance of flinching Snorlax. They were very long and very boring fights, luckily needing more than one attempt only for Kabuto, but if I was struggling this much against them, then I needed something more for the future, so here's what I'm gonna do. Each time Snorlax faces a roadblock, I'm going to be giving him an extra tool that would give him a way of getting out. Because the problem is rock and steel types, I decided to replace Rollout for Brick Break, which should be more useful against them. The last two Pokemon that made me restart were Sandshrew and Nidorino. Sandshrew's Earthquakes were doing too much damage, but he wasn't that threatening, as I only needed to hit a range to be able to get through. As for Nidorino, I only lost against him because I forgot to heal beforehand. And then I forgot again, but on the third attempt I was able to win. Next came the Zero Use room, and teaching Snorlax Brick Break immediately paid off, as it made quick work of both Magnemite and Rhyhorn. There was Beedrill who got lucky with a crit Sludge Bomb with Poison that made me restart, but it was an easy win on the second try. The real problem was Cubone. Thick Club doubles Cubone's attack. Swords Dance doubles it again, so after one turn of setup, I was being hit by what was basically a +4 Earthquake that left Snorlax in the red. Meanwhile, my Body Slams were a 3-shot at best. I could fish for the paralysis, but instead, I decided to give Snorlax the Silk Scarf, pushing Body Slam into a potential 2-shot range. Body Slam got the paralysis anyway, so I ended up winning. I'll keep the Silk Scarf, but it would have been nice to know if the item actually mattered. Moving on to the 6th room, it started great, by losing to Arbok due to getting unlucky with Poison, and to Graveler because I forgot to heal beforehand once again. Jokes aside, the real threat of the room was Gastly. Not because he had any strong moves or anything like that, but because I literally didn't have anything to hit him. Because I replaced Rollout, my only attacking options were Body Slam and Brick Break, both of which don't affect ghost types. My Snorlax was completely useless against Gastly, so he lost. I tried again after replacing Sleep Talk for Shadow Ball, and that got me an easy win, but the thing was, now I didn't have Sleep Talk, and Tangela made me pay for that. He didn't make me restart, but he was once again an opponent that used sleeping moves, and without Sleep Talk, he slowly chipped away Snorlax HP. I luckily won thanks to a paralysis at the end, but because of that fight, I decided to replace the Silk Scarf for a Lumberry. That way, I can either immediately heal with Rest or heal any other status condition that the opponent might use, which were starting to become a common issue. In the never used room, things started getting a bit more difficult. The first issue came in Golbat, but he wasn't too bad, as I only needed to swap the Lumberry for the Silk Scarf. Hitmonchan, on the other hand, was a whole different problem. He outsped and straight up one-shot Snorlax with Sky Uppercut. I tried again to see if it was a range, and literally on the next attempt, he missed the move. Not only that, but then Body Slam got a crit to OHKO him in return. I have no clue if the crit mattered, but my guess is that it did, which might have saved me from countless restarts. Pidgeot came next, and this is where things got complicated. His Double Edge was doing a lot of damage. Meanwhile, Body Slam wasn't doing nearly enough. I decided to replace it for return, but even with the Silk Scarf, it was still not getting the KO. My last option before pressing the panic button was teaching Snorlax Double Edge, and thanks to the recoil from Pidgeot's own Double Edge, my attack was just able to defeat him. The last Pokemon of the room that caused me issues was Machoke. The problem was that he would sometimes use Revenge, which not only is super effective, but if he gets hit first, it does double the damage, which is enough to one-shot Snorlax. Other times, he would start setting up bulk ups, both boosting his attack and defense, which was worse in the long run. The best strategy that I could come up with was hoping that he would go for bulk up at the start and just keep hitting with Double Edge. He eventually attacked with Earthquake instead of Revenge for some reason, and that gave me the chance to finally defeat him, but that was really close. Things continue getting more tricky in the 8th room, as the number of restarts really started piling up. Kabutops was the first wall. After a Swords Dance, his Rock Slide was doing well over half of Snorlax's HP. The move had a chance to flinch, so that was an issue. But the bigger problem was that Brick Break was barely missing on the KO. I gave Snorlax the Black Belt to boost its power, and it still took a bit thanks to the flinches, but on one attempt, Kabutops went for Substitute at the start. I don't know why he did that, but that made the possible 2-shot into a guaranteed one, and I was not going to complain. Poliwrath was the next roadblock, and he was both really tanky, had the super effective Brick Break, and could use Bulk Up to raise his physical stats even more. I probably shouldn't have won this fight, but Snorlax ended up getting lucky, as he got a critical hit on the second attempt to defeat Poliwrath. But the real nightmare of this room was Primeape. He outspeeds and does massive damage with Cross Chop, almost getting a one-shot against Snorlax. Meanwhile, Double Edge was bringing Primeape to a bit below half his HP. I didn't want to depend on Cross Chop missing, so I had to press the panic button, which was to teach Snorlax the move counter. What? You thought it was going to be something else? Unfortunately, I failed to realize that Cross Chop was arranged to one-shot Snorlax, so it took me many attempts to get an attempt where Snorlax lived an attack and was able to kill Primeape back with counter. So there goes all my talk about not wanting to depend on luck. I do not like how much Snorlax is struggling. Next was the underused room, and Snorlax's luck finally ran out. As he finally faced a wall he wasn't able to get through. Let's first start with the restarts. 3 of them were quick ones. Nidoqueen only needed for Snorlax to go for counter instead of attacking. Omastar needed for me to replace Shadow Ball for Earthquake, and Sandslash needed the extra damage from the Silk Scarf to turn him into a 2-shot. Easy feat sis, but that still got the counter increasing. Then there was Pinsir. He liked going for Swords Dance, and if he got 2 off, that was enough to one-shot Snorlax. But it didn't really matter if he went for 1 or 2, as Double Edge wasn't doing enough damage to KO him back. I tried counter, but then he just kept going for Swords Dance until he got the OHKO. I tried equipping a Citrus Berry to Snorlax, but then he just went for Earthquake. I don't know how much that helped me considering that the move still did a lot of damage, but what actually did it was a critical hit, which Snorlax got to defeat Pinsir from almost full HP. Lastly, for the Pokemon that Snorlax couldn't get through, it was Hitmonlee. Like Hitmonchan, he was faster, had a high attack stat, and a powerful super effective move in High Jump Kick. I gave it a couple of attempts to see if it was a range, but it was clear that it wasn't. I could try and wait for a miss or get the Quick Claw for the priority, but I'll wait until I beat everyone except the last 2 Pokemon before trying that. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe, as I'm going to be doing this for a lot more Pokemon, and that really helps me grow. In the penultimate room before fighting the Uber Pokemon, there were less Pokemon that were problematic, but that didn't mean that they were easier. The exception to that rule was Dodrio, who, like Nidoqueen in the last room, just needed for me to use counter instead of just attacking. Marowak was a lot more difficult. Thanks to Thick Club boosting his attack, after a Swords Dance, a single Double Edge was enough to one-shot Snorlax from full HP. My attacks were only doing half, so hoping for a crit was an option. However, while trying to see if Marowak's attacks were a range, I noticed that he would sometimes lead with an attack instead of Swords Dance. Because of that, I tried for a bit to see if I could get him to hit me and then use counter. And on one attempt, it actually worked, defeating him with the move. Then there was Machamp. I won't spend too long on this one, as it was basically a repeat of the Hitmonlee fight. He outsped me, had a high attack stat, and could one-shot me with a super effective cross chop. Like high jump kick, it also has a chance to miss, so I'll try again once I'm close to the end of the run. Also, one fun thing that happened during the fights is that I faced against the one Pokemon that speed ties Snorlax, which was Slowbro. It wasn't that interesting of a fight, as he used rest after taking some damage from Double Edge, dragging the fight, but it was a cool detail that I thought I should mention. The Overuse room was next, and it was surprisingly easier than the last few. Granted, I knew what Pokemon were coming, so I was able to swap the moves in advance for when I needed them, like getting back Shadow Ball for Gengar or Earthquake for Magneton. There was still one threat in the room that caused me to restart though, and ironically, it was Snorlax. On the first attempt, I tried to be clever by spamming counter and waiting for his attack, expecting it would never be able to defeat me. But that was a mistake, as he kept setting up Curse until he was able to one-shot me with Body Slam. On the second try, I went for Double Edge right off the bat instead, but unfortunately, because of the defense boost from Curse, the leftovers he had equipped, and Rest, he was able to out-heal the damage I was doing, and eventually defeated me with Body Slam again. I noticed that I was close to defeating him though, so on the third attempt, I went with the Silk Scarf equipped, and with the boost from it, Double Edge was able to grant me the victory, but just barely. That's all of the Pokemon before getting into the ones in the Ubers tier though, so let's see if getting lucky is enough to defeat the Pokemons I left until the end. The first one I went back for was Hitmonlee, and on my very first attempt, he missed his high jump kick, crashed, put himself into the red, and got finished by a single Double Edge. I guess I would have gotten the same result if I taught Snorlax Protect, but watching him do it to himself was funnier. The second one was Machamp, and this one took a bit more thinking. It took me 12 restarts to get Cross Chop to miss, and when that happened, Double Edge only brought him to just below half of his HP, so Machamp just defeated me the next turn with another attack. I'm not sure if getting the Choice Pen was going to be enough, so instead, I tried the strategy of using Yawn and Protect to put him to sleep. It took me only 4 restarts to get it to work. But then he woke up immediately after being hit by a single Double Edge and OHKO'd me. 16 restarts later, and I finally get Cross Chop to miss and landed Yawn, only to misclick and go for counter instead of Protect, getting defeated once more. 3 more restarts, and I misclicked again after getting the Yawn to land, but this time I don't get punished, as Machamp misses Cross Chop a second time. He doesn't wake up after a single attack, so this time I was able to safely defeat him. It definitely could have taken less restarts, especially without the misclicks, but I'm happy that it's finally over. To end the run, it's the final 2 Pokemon, Mewtwo and Mew. I challenged Mew first since he seemed like the easiest of the two. Mew started with Swords Dance, and I led with Shadow Ball to test the damage, and it was doing a bit above half of his HP. Mew then hit back with Brick Break for massive damage, and that was basically the end of me, as my next attack was obviously not enough to defeat him, and the second hit from Mew KO'd me. Second attempt, I led with Yawn as Mew attacked with Brick Break, and he then set up a Swords Dance while I attacked with Shadow Ball. He fell asleep by the end of the turn, but what I didn't notice was that he had a Lumberry equipped, healing the sleep status and then defeating me. I didn't want to use this, but looks like I have no choice. Next attempt, and while Mew went for Swords Dance, I started spamming counter. He thankfully then hit with a Brick Break, so I was able to reflect the damage and KO him back. I know it's a bit anticlimactic, but it's the one way that I can think of that can beat Mew with what I have. I have to take advantage of Snorlax's massive HP in some way. I then went for Mewtwo, and as he raised his stats with Coal Mine, I went for Yawn to put him to sleep. His Thunder didn't do much the next turn, and my Shadow Ball managed to get a crit to bring him to a sliver of HP. That wasn't necessary though, as he fell asleep and gave me the chance to freely attack him to put an end to the last Pokémon of the Pokédex. So, can Snorlax beat all 151 Pokémon in Fire Red with their competitive moveset? Yes, but with an asterisk. His massive HP and special defense stat made him able to wall most special attacking Pokémon, but his decent physical defense and low speed gave him lots of trouble against the fighting types. Thankfully, most of them relied on a move that didn't have perfect accuracy, so I was able to take advantage of that and eventually defeat them. But I'm not sure how well he would have done if they had something like Brick Break. Still, he did manage to beat all 151 Pokémon, proving that, as long as your other stats are good, speed isn't the most important thing. Well, I guess it also helps to have a diverse move pool. So overall, I think his performance was amazing. But anyways, did I miss anything on the video? If you think so, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.